welcome to the Nerdy Birdie. If you don't already know, this webinar series, we're showing you start to finish examples of successful integrations with our synthesized vendor and channel partners. Today we have Mark Glowacz. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
You mentioned Glowacz. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm trying to put that together. But yeah, we're here with Mark, and we're going to take a deep dive into the Mailprotector integration, and he's going to share us some helpful tricks as far as managing multiple domains and security group tips and tricks as far as O365 and ultimately getting paid for everything that you do and not spend unnecessarily out of your pocket. Now, as far as it goes, this success-focused webinar series, we all realize that it's one thing to get an integration off the ground. It's quite another to see it take up flight. So we're every month featuring guest speakers on the vendor side, and they're sharing with us their integration experience with synthesized billing module. So with that said, we know that there is going to be turbulence, and yes, I'm going to throw out those cliche flight. I mean, our mascot, our spokesbird is a flamingo, for crying out loud, but there is turbulence along the way. So we realize that there's going to be hiccups along the way when it comes to integrations and especially when it comes to billing. Billing is something that we don't want to mess around with, and we just want to hear your feedback. So if you do have anything to share, whether it be good, bad, or ugly, we do truly want to hear it, because as far as success goes, Mark and myself, we truly want to make your lives easier. We'll get into some brief introductions, but myself, Mark, we're both coming from MSPs, so we truly understand all the nuances that go on, especially when it comes to billing alone and email protection and whatnot, that it's no easy feat to run an MSP. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and I'm going to show you a demo as to what the Mailprotector integration looks like, and hopefully we're going to be able to answer your questions today. If you do have any burning questions, we're going to have some follow-up Q&A as well. So to get started, brief agenda, we're going to do some introductions. Myself, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty with synthesized billing. We're going to showcase that Mailprotector integration, what it takes in order to get that configured, set up. There's still time this month, quite honestly, just to get started, create an account. If you haven't already, it takes a matter of minutes just to sync your PSA to synthesized billing, get configured with Mailprotector, and hopefully you're going to be able to get that connected in time for your next billing cycle. So that's the hope here today. And then on top of that is just Mark's going to then be talking again on security groups and tips and tricks when it comes just to managing multiple domains, aliases, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then again, we're going to follow up that with some Q&A if you do have any questions related to Mailprotector, any of their products or services, and synthesized billing. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass it over to Mark to do his brief introduction there. But I'm going to pass it over to the Nerdy Birdie himself, Mark Glowacz. So there you go.
Brian. Thank you, Brian. So as Brian said, my name is Mark Glowacz, Vice President of Partner Success at Mailprotector. I was a former MSP for about a decade. I started my own practice in Austin, Texas. About 7 or so years into having the business, I was then acquired by a multi-city larger MSP and stayed on with them as part of their executive team for a few years. So been in your shoes, know exactly what it's like to be an MSP and living and breathing in the channel. But my true passion is really making technology work for small businesses. Now that I'm in this capacity at Mailprotector, it's how can I help our partners be successful with the Mailprotector solutions, and by extension, making you guys the heroes to your customers who need email security, who doesn't. So that's kind of my background, and I've been with Mailprotector now just over 5.5 years. And it's been a fun ride. We've got some cool stuff that we're showing today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then for me, I am too, like I said, a recovering MSP. I like to throw that out there because I only empathize with all of you when it comes to running an MSP, but I'm truly dedicated to help you realize the full potential of the synthesized platform. So ultimately with the goals of just scaling your business and getting paid for everything that you do, because it's one thing doing it, it's one thing getting paid, and we have synthesized billing here to help you along the way. So with the Mailprotector integration, this makes things so much easier because, like you said, Mark, like Mark said, everyone needs email security, and you know, as whether you itemize those out or you do service bundling or whatever you do, ultimately you want to reconcile each and every one of those services, just so you have a better overall cost of goods sold into your resale stack, so you realize those better margins and whatnot. So without further ado, it's time to get nerdy and get into the nitty gritty with the Mailprotector integration. So I'm going to stop sharing briefly, and then I'm going to share my screen once more, and we're going to show this awesome integration with Mailprotector. So bear with me. And for all you attending, Eric, Betsy, Ruben, is this the first time seeing our billing module?
I've taken a look at it before. I actually I have a call with you tomorrow, Brian,
Yes.
on an onboarding. I just wanted to get a quick overview. I was trying to make
Sure.
the Mailprotector one work, and I can't. Like, for some reason, I don't see it. So I'm sure I'm doing
Right.
something wrong, and I'm like, it seems interesting. So
Yeah. Mailprotector was in fact the first vendor to integrate with our synthesized platform. So big props and kudos to the Mailprotector team, because we put them through a lot of tests and trials just to get this thing working. But yeah, let's step through that. So if this is the first time that you're seeing our billing module, what you see is effectively we've synced all of your client contracts and services into our billing module. So you have single page resale visibility across your entire resale stack. So what you see is all of your services, your reoccurring services, grouped per, say, product or service. So this said, obviously we're taking a look at Mailprotector and their various SKUs and products. So let's just jump into the integrations page first and foremost, and we're just going to just take a big dive into there. So I'm going to scroll down to the Mailprotector vendor card, and I'm going to get connected. So first things first, I'm going to click that. I'm going to open our portal. I already have this open. This is the Mailprotector console. So I already was playing around with this prior to, so I'm just going to disable this and start from the very start here. But when you do go to the console, you're just going to the integrations tab here. You're going to see your previous Autotask ConnectWise integrations as well. Gradient is a little unique in itself. Mark, you mentioned previously, I think that we're the only ones that take into account bundles, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you just touch on just bundles there for a second?
Sure. So our bracket encryption product, in order for that product to work, you do have to have inbound and outbound email flowing through Mailprotector. So that also includes Cloudfilter and SafeSend. That's kind of what we call a bundle. And with the other integrations, the direct integrations with other PSAs, that bundle is not really recognized because of how the integration is built. Gradient and the flexibility that we've been able to work with you guys, we were able to pull that out of our billing system and recognize those bundles, which makes it easier to reconcile that billing at the end of the day.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do connect that Mailprotector integration, once you start that configuration in synthesized billing, you're going to be given a gradient key, and this is unique to each and every one of the integrations that you connect to in our billing module. So you're just going to be able to copy that, open the Mailprotector console from here, go to the integrations tab, and then you're just going to populate that gradient API key here, and you're going to click enable. Now, before we jump back into gradient, we're going to do one thing, and that is mapping customers. So we're doing that mapping within the Mailprotector console. So what you have to actually do before you even click next here and check the connection is to first go into your customer list, click on the customer, and go to the integrations tab within the customer. And from here, this is where you're going to assign that client within the Mailprotector console to what has been synced from your PSA, which is pulled in from the synthesized platform there. So this is where I'm going to search A1A car wash. And once you select that, it's going to automatically map that. And then you're just going to do that for each and every one of your customers. Now, you're probably asking, Brian, why this? Well, this is just an initial setup and mapping of your customers to that of your Mailprotector console. So this is a necessary step, but again, it's just the initial configuration of this integration. It shouldn't take you very much time, to be honest. So again, your Mailprotector console, again, might have some discrepancy to what your customer list is within your PSA too. So we want to make sure that you're mapping those appropriately. So once all is said and done, again, it should take you only a few minutes, depending on how many customers you have within the console. But again, you're just going in here. Obviously, that maybe that's not a good one because there was no, oh, there's one domain, but we're just going to map this one instead. Go to the integrations tab, gregarious. We have some fun with our account names here. So now, since we mapped our customers, we're now able to jump back into gradient, and then this is where we're going to check that connection. So boom, everything looks great. So this is where we've, for that connection to be successful, we just need to make sure that at least one customer is mapped within the console. Obviously, you want to map them all, but again, we're just going to click next now that we have a successful connection with the Mailprotector console. Now comes mapping of services. So what you see on the right is all of the Mailprotector services, products, and then what we're going to do is map these Mailprotector services or products to services within your PSA. So this is where we're going to do a partial search here. We can hit that filter button. We're scouring your product catalog or service catalog for cloud filter. If it was named differently within your service catalog, then it's just a quick little search here just to find that particular SKU. And then it's as easy as drag and dropping that over and mapping to that particular product. And then you're just going to go through that list. So this is where, again, we have bundles and brackets. Again, this is unique to the gradient integration, so you can take advantage of those. But we're just going to go through this to effectively map every single service from your PSA to that of the console. And real easy. Again, it's a one-time setup. We can go in here after the fact and update our service mappings too. What's flexible too with this integration is potentially you want to use the Mailprotector integration as your quote unquote source of truth to say reconcile or audit your per user bundles or whatever it may be. If that's your source of truth and you have, say, a bracket bundle or cloud filter across all your users, heck, why not use that as your source of truth to reconcile your user bundle? So you could effectively have some flexibility if you wanted to map to, say, maybe we have a premium user support. We can map that to whatever service. So on top of that, I'm going to toggle the hide mapped, and this is where we're going to see those that had been previously mapped. So I will also want to mention the fact that we can actually do a many to one service mapping. So this is really important to if you struggle in your PSA with consistency. Maybe you have multiple like services within your product catalog, all of the same thing, but for whatever it is, I coming from an MSP, I know all too well that you're just trying to get the invoices out, and for all we know, you might have just created another SKU, even though it's the same thing. So this is where you can actually do multiple mappings if you needed to. So say for instance, maybe you had the same SKU for Cloud Filter, multiple SKUs for that. Well, we can just assign multiple services to that single product within the Mailprotector console. So with that said, if you're happy with the mappings, we can actually click next. And before we actually finish this, we have to do one last thing to finish and finalize this integration. So it's actively talking back and forth with not only Gradient, but the Mailprotector console. And that is just to go into the overall integrations tab here and update counts. So once we initiate that, we're then going to be able to suck in all that product usage from the console. And this is now an active integration. It is now pulling that information. And so if you ever needed to do an on-demand sync with the console, this is where you're just going to come into the console itself, go to the integrations tab, update counts, and then this is where you're going to force that sync if you needed to. But now that we've done that, we've effectively fully configured the integration. It's now talking back and forth. It's a live integration at this point, and we can then click finish. Once we click finish, this is where we're going to be able to see those values extracted from the console. So when we do map services to products within that integration, or within any integration within the billing module here, is we're going to tag it by that and associate it to that vendor. This helps you to be able to go in here, filter by that vendor association or that vendor tag, if you will, click apply, and then you're just then shortening that list so you're not having to scroll on and trying to find those particular services that you need to reconcile. So right off the bat, you're going to be able to see just a status symbol indicating that, hey, this integration is live, it's active, it's all good. And then we're going to be able to review those particular service cards for those client contracts. So you can see here, oh, gregarious simulation systems, 28 currently indicates, the blue number indicates, if you don't know, the PSA count. This is what is currently in your PSA. So if we're looking at email compliance, safe send, this is where that's the customer. This is the actual recurring agreement or contract within your PSA, followed by the blue number indicating the PSA count. This is currently what's the amount of units on Managed 360 plus recurring contract for this particular service. Now, from the console, it's showing 28. So, hey, there's no change. Boom, reconcile. 29 to 28, there was a true down of 1 unit. Boom, reconcile. So you're going to be able to see these changes, these downgrades, upgrades throughout the month, and then truly be able to get paid for everything that you do each and every month. So you're going into our billing module prior to your invoice cycle because you're billing in advance. So this is where you're going to suck in all that information from the Mailprotector integration. You're going to be able to review these. And the reason why we want you to review these is because we want to make sure that we are truly identifying those underperforming services. Month over month, when you import those unit counts and that product usage from these integrations, you're going to be able to see the net profit and revenue change. So you're going to be able to really identify exactly why am I losing money here for this particular service. And then this is where you can even expand that particular service and, oh, A1A car wash went down by 5 units. Well, why? Maybe there is an issue as far as not pinning it on the console necessarily, but maybe there is an issue when it comes to managing multiple domains. And this is where Mark's going to spend some time shortly after this in just making sure that you're managing your domains properly within the console. So again, you're not paying unnecessarily out of pocket, and you have a true indication as to what's currently deployed across all your managed users. So this is maybe this is a true indication. Maybe you just want to raise that red flag. What's going on here? Why do I have this big influx or delta, if you will? You can adjust these. You can manually override these counts too, if you choose. Again, I also like to point out the ability to add prorated transactions. If your PSA supports it, you can actually add multiple prorated transactions all within our billing module. Again, without even setting foot within your PSA. So with that said, you can do that all from here. And the moment you action those service cards, the moment you do a multi-select and approve, or you reconcile those service cards, that's when we'll be updating your PSA client contracts. So you're free to explore CSV imports. You're free to explore our vendor integrations, and suck in all that product usage. Again, we're not touching it until you action those service cards. So that way you truly have the insights and you can make better business decisions when it comes to updating those unit counts. Because ultimately we just want to make sure that you have invoice accuracy. I've been in an MSP where I haven't billed a client for 6 months, and that's essentially money left on the table, and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars left on the table. Or on the flip side, you're overcharging your client, which then turns into hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of write-off. So we don't want that. And this is truly where you're going to be able to review and reconcile those all from within synthesized billing. So if I know we have some Q&A, so keep your questions until then. I'm going to flip it back to Mark. So Mark, I'm going to start sharing here, and then you can get talking about the quick tips and tricks when it comes to managing multiple domains.
Absolutely. So let me make sure I've got my right window here. All right, and hopefully my browser is visible.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. So since we're really focused on the integration and how billing reconciliation is done with Gradient, that's where I'm going to focus, is really talk about the tips and tricks and kind of things to know about how Mailprotector handles accounts and how they are billed. So just to kind of start with the basics here, I'm going to jump into one of our demo domains and just talk about the users. So when you look at the user list in Mailprotector, you're going to see all the email addresses associated with the domain. And all these addresses have a type, and the type column is going to essentially tell you what's billable and what's not. So the main thing to know is Mailprotector, we're somewhat taking Microsoft's lead here. We're going to bill you for real users, for actual people with licenses, not for all of those resource type of addresses that every business has. So the only billable types are going to be user and discovered user. If you see any others, if you see contact, mailing list, we also have one called unlicensed user, which is a bit of a catch-all because Microsoft, even Google, don't always tell us the differences between an equipment room or a shared resource mailbox. We're pulling those in because we have to know about those addresses, but they show up as unlicensed user. All that means in Mailprotector is we recognize it. We're going to do the filtering or whatever products you have associated with that address, but it's not considered a billable address. So that's the one thing that I would say is pay attention when you're looking at the type. User or discovered user is billable, anything else is not. And that's a quick way to just take a look at what's going on in a domain. This can also be a little bit confusing because this is showing 38 addresses, and that's really what's here is 38 addresses, 38 users, but they're not necessarily billable users. So if we come over to the customer and look at the domains from the customer level, and we got a lot of domains going on here. No, this is not how. So here, if we look at the overview at the customer level, it's showing that we have 41 domains in here, but we only have 148 billable users across all 41 domains. So if you look at that overview from the customer level, that user count on this overview screen is going to be your billable count. The other way is to just look at the billing, the statement that's going to be in the billing tab. This is a demo account, so unfortunately I don't have a billing tab here to look at. But that's going to break down how many billable licenses are in every domain. Of course, with the gradient integration, you're going to have that up to date because that integration's doing a check and bringing all that information in on a nightly basis. Moving on from there, let's talk about multiple domains, because as we all know with Microsoft 365, one of the nice features of it is you can have a single tenant with multiple domains. And I've got an example here. So this is one of our development environments in 365, and we have a couple of domains set up here. So we've got our mp-office365.com domain, and then another one, mptest.net. And by the way, while I'm here, just because we've seen a lot of questions from partners about this, the status is showing that there's possible service issues. The only reason it's showing that is because the DNS records, the MX records are pointing to Mailprotector instead of directly to Office 365, and it doesn't like that. There's no way to fix it. There's no way to tell Microsoft, oh, just go ahead and ignore that. So that's going to be a very common thing, is to see that possible service issue on the status, simply because the MX records are pointed to Mailprotector. So using this as an example, we'll come back here to the console. And like we talked about, here are users. Most of these users, actually this one, because it's the development environment. So these are all showing up as unlicensed user. Mailing list is also an unbillable account. So we have 14 addresses in here, and none of them are billable. So we'll just pretend that some of these are billable user accounts and they would show up as user. Here's a trick to know about Mailprotector and the way we handle these domains. So in our tenant, we have mp-office365.com and mptest.net. When you add a domain to Mailprotector, we consider this a primary domain, or basically what's going to be the primary address of accounts. So when we go to sync from that 365 tenant, we're only going to be looking for the addresses that are mp-office365. You can then, under this customer, add mptest.net as a second domain. But because that's going to be primary addresses, in other words, every one of those addresses. So if I had Mark at mpoffice365.com, and I also had Mark at mptest.net. If I had two of these domains under this customer, I would have two accounts in Mailprotector. So I would also be billed for two users in Mailprotector. That's not always what you want. That's not always even the intended functionality, because sometimes those additional domains in 365 are really there as aliases, or maybe another brand that a company has. So the way to prevent double billing when you have multiple domains in 365 is what I always recommend is choose the domain that the most users have as their primary address. That primary address will then bring those users over. Then you can also add the domain alias, in this case, mptest.net. No, that's not what we have here. So the way we would do that is mptest.net. and add. Of course, it's a live demo, so we're having problems. No, actually, I know what's going on here. nptest.net is something our development team is using. They're working on some additional integrations with 365. So because they're using that as a separate domain, we can't add it as an alias. But if we were to add it, this is how it would show up. It would show up as an alias. We would have to verify it. The verification step is just like anything else you use with 365 or Google Workspace. You have to go add a text record in DNS. Once you add that text record and verify, this is now live in Mailprotector. And what will happen is when we go do that user sync, it's going to look for addresses with npoffice365.com as well as the domain alias and bring all of those addresses in and associate them as alias addresses with all of these accounts with npoffice365.com. It's important to note that because it means Mailprotector is going to accept and validate all of those email addresses coming into Cloudfilter, whatever products you have, but we're only going to bill you once. So if Andy also had nptest.net, that would show up as an alias. So here he would actually have an alias that was for Andy at nptest.net, and we would show that he has addresses for those two domains. And you only get billed once because we consider that second domain a domain alias, which equates to being an alias address, and you're not billed for it. This concept can sometimes be a little tricky. What I would say is if you find yourself in a situation you're not really sure, open up a ticket with our partner success team. We're happy to walk through use cases because they can sometimes have some variations, especially if you have a customer with a tenant that has like 5 domains in there. That can get a little squirrely depending on how the customer is using those domains, and we're happy to help because we understand how important it is to right size your offering to the customer and make sure that you're billing appropriately. And because Mailprotector is not looking at the email addresses as a one-to-one relationship between Mailprotector and Office 365, it can get a little tricky. And we get that, so we're happy to help. But hopefully that makes sense. And just to kind of quickly summarize again, when you're looking at the users in the Mailprotector console, as long as the type is user or discovered user, you will be billed. Anything else will be considered not billable. When dealing with multiple domains, if you can, add those secondary domains in 365 as domain aliases. That way the addresses will be recognized, but you won't be double billed or triple billed if you have 3 domains or more, and you're going to be able to control costs much better. All right, so now let's move on to user sync. So we kind of talked about those users. Of course, getting the users into the Mailprotector console, that's always the tricky part, especially when you're first adding that domain. That's actually critical step number 1. Mailprotector needs to know what addresses are we protecting? What are we going to look for when it comes to directory harvesting and spoofing? So having that user list is very important. With 365 or with Google Workspace, or if you still have on-prem servers out there, you can connect to Active Directory. But in this case, we'll continue to focus on 365. It's a very, very simple process. You choose 365 as your user source. I do have a couple already here set up, but I'll just run through this really quick. So I choose it. I will connect to Office 365. And it is kind of nice. I'm already logged in to the 365 console here. So when I go to click Office 365, if I weren't logged into a 365 admin center already, I would be asked to log in with a global admin account. But in this case, I'm already there. So I'm going to sign in again with that global admin account. It's going to ask for permissions. The way this integration works is we're going to be talking to Microsoft Graph to get that address information and what type of addresses they are. So we're going to know, are they aliases, shared mailboxes, distribution groups, etc. Once we accept that, it does connect and it creates another user sync. And by the way, we started with 2, and now we've added a 3rd. So this is a tip that a lot of partners don't know about. Even though we're talking to a single tenant, you can have multiple user sync sources talking to the same tenant. And I'll go into why that's useful here in a moment. But as far as getting that user sync set up, that was it. You choose 365, use a global admin account to connect to that environment using an application API. So once it's done, you're done. And we'll talk about some of these other things here in a moment. Destination, just know that this destination refers to a group in Mailprotector of where those changes that the user sync makes are going to be applied. All right, and since we don't really want to use this one, I'm going to delete it. And we'll focus on these other two. So like I was mentioning, you can have multiple user sources to the 365 tenant. And one of the ways this becomes very beneficial, so if we come back here to our users, you'll also notice that we have a group column, and everybody in this domain right now is in the default group. At the top, to the right of the domain, we have our group chooser, and you can see we have two groups here. Our default group is just set up for filtering, just that basic email security. We also have a second group, though, called the bracket group for those users that are going to need bracket encryption as well. There's nobody in there right now. Now, you could manually come in here, choose a couple of people, and then hit our little move icon and move them into the bracket group. That's one way to do it. For smaller customers, that might be perfectly fine. But if you want to get a little bit fancier and you want to try to be a little bit more hands-off, and this kind of goes back to some best practices that I had in my managed service, I didn't want techs to have to worry about doing too many things to make sure that my customers were billed correctly. So my technicians would make the changes necessary in the 365 environment, based on who needs a mailbox and maybe who's leaving, who's going to have to go from being a user license to being a shared resource while the data is, scrubbed out. So all of that happens in 365. But I don't want them having to come to Mailprotector at the same time to then get them synced into here and then maybe moved into the right group to have the right products and services. So the user sync allows us to kind of set up that automation. So at the very top level here, we don't have any filters applied. So we have our 365 users. They're all going to be going to that default group. And when we look at the filters, we can hit preview and it'll show us here are all the addresses that are going to get pulled in. There's no action being taken right now. And then here we can click on a detail to kind of see what information's been pulled in. Where this gets fun is adding that second sync. So this user source, you'll notice, is a little different. The connection, exactly the same way. In fact, I use the same global admin account to make the connection. But now in the filter, I've now added a filter that's going to look for the member of attribute to contain bracket users. And if that matches, I'm going to want those users to be put into the bracket group. And if I come back to filters here and do a preview, you'll notice I have two users, Dallas and Jeremy, that match that criteria. So how did this actually work? Let's go back to 365. So we have all of our users listed here. And here's Dallas and here's Jeremy. And there's really nothing special about the user list, but it's the groups, and in this particular case, security groups that I'm taking advantage of. So I created the security group called bracket users. I put Dallas and Jeremy as members of that group. So here are Dallas and Jeremy. And this is where helping your technicians to focus on understanding the one source of truth being 365 and knowing that when an employee at a customer gets hired, do they need certain services? If you have security groups set up that will put them on those correct services, in this case, bracket, then that's all they need to do. And this integration with 365 and these multiple sources being set up this way, where we're going to look for all those default users. And then if anybody else needs to have bracket, that second sync is going to run as well. And then put them in the correct group. So right now, I'm going to run this preview. Right now we have no changes. And here's the last part of this tip that is very important. By default, we're not going to move users between groups with user sync. But in this case, we want that to happen because we're looking at the security group in 365 to identify which users need to be in the bracket group. So we're going to turn on move users. Once we have that turned on, you see right now, all of these are no action. But if I preview it now after turning move users on, well, it's going to make a liar out of me. Maybe not. Okay, that is correct. Why are they not? Oh, maybe I have this as a sort wrong. So the user source order is important because the way that user source check runs, that the last one is going to be the winner. So maybe that is what I'm doing wrong here. There we go. I had that order wrong. Sorry. So now we can see that Dallas and Jeremy are going to be moved from the default group to the bracket group. And our sync is going to run by default every hour. So once your technicians make the changes in 365, within the hour, all those changes are also going to be reflected in Mailprotector. So right now we have no users in bracket. Everybody's still in default, but we'll come back to user sync. We'll manually run this. So that sync and save is going to have that user sync process run. We can see here the results, the confirmation that it moved Dallas and Jeremy to the bracket group. And if we come to users, we can see those two users are now in the bracket group. And if we look up here as well, the bracket group now has 2 users. So this user sync is a very handy way of automating some of that synchronization and some of that provisioning that goes on with customers without having to force your technicians into knowing to jump into a second or maybe even a third interface to make sure everything's correct. And then, of course, the integration with Gradient, excuse me, later this evening would run and show that, hey, these 2 users are now in the bracket group. So they also have the bracket license, in this case, the bracket bundle. So then when you go to do that reconciliation in Gradient, you would see that this customer now has 2 new users in the bracket bundle, and you can reconcile that to make sure everything looks correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Mark, for showing us that. Some really good tips on just overall managing those things. I'm getting some reverberation there. Might be you, Mark. I'm gonna mute you for a second. But yeah, no, that's incredible. I wish I had known that when I was in my MSP days, because we all know that it's incredibly difficult to get your technicians to go the extra mile and make sure that your clients, your customers are billed appropriately. And this makes sure that you're doing so, and you're doing that in a streamlined fashion. It's automatic with the use of those filters and setting those destination types and whatnot. So really, really interesting stuff. Thank you so much for showing that. I'm just going to open it up for some Q&A now that Mark still has his screen shared here. You are all allowed to talk, so you can just go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have any questions there. No questions? I'm gonna give it. Now this is the awkward time where I just sit here and wait. So I'm just gonna give it a couple more seconds here. All right. Well, hopefully.
I did have a
here we go.
question here. I think what I was doing wrong initially, why I couldn't get Gradient set up, is I have ConnectWise set up inside of Mailprotector. So I need to remove or disable that before I can do Gradient. Okay.
That's a great point. I should have mentioned that earlier. So if you do have an existing integration with either Autotask or ConnectWise, those were previously those integrations before we came along, you do have to disable that and then re-enable using that Gradient API key to update those counts. So yes, you would need to do that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Awesome. If there are no other questions, I'm going to just wrap it up here. Again, thank you so much, Mark. Do you have any closing comments before we let everyone go? Oh,
no, thank you for having me. It's always great to, share some of these tips with partners. So hopefully it was useful.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone. We're gonna end it, 10 minutes shy of the hour, so you can get that time back. Next month, the next series of Nerdy Birdie features Chris Tim. If you know of him, he's the technical director of Sandella Consulting Limited. He also is the author of PSA Profitability, the ultimate guide to profitability with your PSA tool. We're going to get into the nitty gritty to learn PSA best practices, whether it makes sense to resell service bundles or itemize everything in a single service in your resale stack, to how to reconcile those services, and so much more. So I'll drop a quick link in the chat here if you're interested and want to register for the next Nerdy Birdie. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Gradient Support. You'll be in touch with our success team. And then on top of that, you being a Mailprotector partner right now, just reach out to their success team, create a ticket. They're more than happy to jump on and help you at any point in time. So thank you so much. I'll give you back the last 10 minutes here into your day, and we look forward to next month, the next Nerdy Birdie. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.